object.
I'd sustain that objection.
So they would tell everybody, we'll have this giant screen, we'll have, you know, let's come watch the game, go to the meeting, come watch the game. You know, so they're thankful. I think now we're just competing with the homeowner.
So, okay, I'd like to welcome everyone to the October 8th, 2014 Brentwood Planning and Zoning meeting. If you'll please join me with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Rich Albertino.
Here.
Jeff Moore.
Here.
John Nuremberger is here. Michael Daming.
Here.
Dan Glowski.
Here.
Jennifer Hansen.
Here.
David Plefko.
Here.
I think we have a quorum, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, query to Mr. Wise. We have 11 current members on the commission.
That is correct.
Okay, looks like we do have a quorum. Thank you,
Okay.
Mr. Nuremberger. Has everyone had an opportunity to review the September 17th meeting minutes? And are there any other changes or amendments to said minutes? Seeing none, they'll stand as submitted. First item under old business is a petition from Lawn Care Equipment Company for a site plan and conditional use permit approval. Is the petitioner here?
Yeah.
Please step forward, Mr. King. For the benefit of the audience, the commission knows that this application has been before the commission. I believe this is the third meeting that we've considered this. The petitioner has worked with many of the recommendations and has made almost nearly all of the recommendations that I believe the commission has suggested to date. So we'd like to thank the petitioner and his able counsel in working with us. But saying that, Mr. King, how has this site plan changed since the last time you were before the commission?
Well, we've made several changes. Number one, and the biggest change is if you look on the west end, the northwest corner of the two properties, we originally thought that would be green space. Mr. Russo needs that very badly. It's being used today as parking for his employees and some customer overflow for his business that's to the west. So that'll be a paved portion of the site. If you look at the north of that site, that is all green space with plantings all along that property line in there. Now, the plantings will be low as they get to the street corner or to the street or the corner of the property so that it will not interfere with any sight lines of people coming down Ruth Avenue. Then if you go to, we have covered with vinyl fencing the area where the trash dumpsters are. That has been covered with vinyl fencing. To the west of that, the triangular shaped piece and the kind of odd shaped piece that's right up against the road, that again will all be green space and will be landscaped with plantings that will be either approved by you all or by the staff. Then we have the road that will be used to take equipment across the Ruth Avenue to be repaired. That will all be, of course, asphalted all the way up through there with parking places. Then the road will turn to the left, to the west, and take, that will only be used, that road will only be used by the equipment people that will be using our road, by the equipment people that will be, by our employees that will be taking the equipment to the shop to the west. Again, now if you look, all that property to the north, adjacent to the house, is going to be in green space, and that will have a vinyl fence, a white vinyl fence up against it, and it will be 6 foot high. So that fence will run from the edge of our property line on the northeast, across, down, and then all the way across to the property line. Now, again, that'll have to either be lowered or no fencing in that area, according to your building restrictions, front yard building restrictions, so it does not cause a problem of sightline distance for those people traveling south or north on Ruth Avenue. We have parking that will be up against the building that we will be using for the larger equipment, and we have parking along the side of our property line. The entrance will be only one entrance into the site now, as opposed to the way it is all along there. The area that will be in front of the store is one of the areas that we will be using to every day we'll put out several pieces of equipment as to show the general public that we have it and that it's for sale. It's a larger equipment, and we hope to have a planter box in there, and I've shown that we will have low landscaping if required in that area. Again, the hours of operation are still the same, 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Friday and Saturday. Presently on the site, we have about 90% covered space when you count the gravel area. So we are going to have now 75% coverage and 25% green space. So we have about 15% more green space today than we had when we originally purchased this piece of property. Now, the other thing I'd like to point out, again, there will be white pines, 6-foot white pines planted along the north property line adjacent to the house. And of course, the smaller, lower type landscaping along the fence. Now, we can either do one of two things. We can either put that landscaping against the fence on our side or on the neighbor's side, and that would be preferably for the neighbor that's just to the north of us that fronts on Ruth Avenue.
Do we know what the neighbor wants in that regard?
I haven't talked to him, and we will find out what he wants. Whatever he wants, that's what we'll do. I think that's basically everything that we have done that is new. This is all going to be new asphalt, we think, and it'll all be new parking lines. Everything will be new. That'll be to the west. The northwest piece is owned by Mr. Russo. That will be well landscaped, and again, new asphalt that'll be in that area. We're looking at talking to MSD about putting pervious asphalt in on the parking lot, which would help the water runoff, and we're going to leave that, if that's what they want, and I'm pretty sure that's what they're going to desire, we'll put that in. As we don't have to, but just to help the situation, we will put that in. If there are any questions, I'm more than happy to try to answer them.
Okay, very good. Well, again, it's a dramatically different site plan that we're looking at today than when we were first presented with this application. So we appreciate all of the changes that have been made to date, and which are not cheap. So we recognize that, and we appreciate the willingness to work
Mr.
with us.
Russo, once this is completed and he gets it paid for, you know, that he has it worked out, he's going to do improvements to the building on Ruth Ave, or that's across Ruth Avenue from it.
Okay. Questions for the applicant, Mr. Obertino?
I have no issue with the additional parking. I think it's probably a good thing, but you've got some problems with the way that thing's designed. It's currently not designated as a one-way drive, and you got a 15-foot drive aisle to get out of two-way 90-degree parking, which is about 9 feet too short.
Yeah.
So you're either going to need to make that a one-way,
Designate it one way.
one-way 18-foot wide. I think the fire department's probably going to want that to be 18-foot wide to get through there.
Okay.
And angle those stalls to try and get at least 18, whatever the city ordinance is going to dictate there, but 15 foot's not going to work for you. You may
Okay.
lose a couple of stalls in getting that fixed, but
Any objection to those changes?
No,
Mr. King?
not at all.
Other questions for the applicant? Yes, Mr. Nuremberger.
Couple of questions. You have marked in the front of the property, asphalt berm. I'm not sure I understand that. We're right by the sign in the front.
That really, there's a sign in the end of that, but that is a planter box, and then we'll have an asphalt berm right across there.
How tall would the planter box be at what you see from the street?
It'll be about 4 feet, 3 to 4 feet high. What
I
it is
didn't
right
see
here.
the dimensions. It's on,
Oh, here it is down at the bottom. It'll be 4 feet high.
okay.
Oh, no, wait, it's 2 feet high and 12 feet.
But it's raised,
12 inches
really,
wide.
I just wanted,
Yes,
it's
it's raised.
raised off the asphalt or
Yes, it
whatever.
is.
Because the back area is where they're gonna be,
The
do
equipment,
displays and that sort of thing.
correct.
And the applicant has agreed to not parking any of the items outside in the front of the other location once this is established.
Correct.
Right.
And that'll be
So
taken in every night.
we're gonna be taking care of one problem. A lot of complaints have come in over the years or whatever, and we're gonna repair that or take care of that with the new location. That's-
Correct.
The other thing, the AC on the raised concrete, is that, I thought it was gonna be on the roof. I might be confusing another
I
applicant.
don't think so.
Okay,
I
so
think
it's
that-
just gonna be on ground level at the back of the building?
Correct.
It's pre-existing and about 3 foot above grade.
Oh, okay, understand. The next question is, we talked about the rocks that are just behind the AC. And to me, I think we should planting of some sort. I don't know if that was raised. We talked about being able to drive through or whatever, or what kind of rocks are gonna be there. If they're big rocks, I understand, but big rocks are expensive. I would rather have a tree or bush to keep somebody from driving over that area to the parking area.
Sure,
You know,
we
the
will do
Green
that.
Street, okay.
Okay. Yeah, we will take care of that.
You might think about just doing a couple of white pines or something like that in that area instead of the rocks. you know.
Okay.
But that's not a problem. So I think and I think you guys are really taking care of a big problem that was mentioned by one of the residents that came to our meeting. They were really concerned about the driving, turning around in the residential area. I think this takes care of a lot of problems that were existing before they decided to do this, so.
Thank you.
All right, that's all I had, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Plufka?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just had a question, and I guess it's drawn from some of the comments you made tonight. You had indicated when you talked about the asphalt drive, the 15-foot wide asphalt drive, that it would be used solely by whom?
Well, of course, the asphalt drive in, wait a minute. The asphalt drive on the piece of property that's under consideration would only be used by the employee using the tractor to take equipment over to the other building for repair.
So if we angle, as Mr. Albertino suggested, if you angle those parking spaces in the lot to the left, or to the west,
That's,
how's that lot accessed then by anything other than the asphalt drive?
well, they would come in off of Ruth Avenue and park.
How would they do that and then park backwards? I mean, unless the angles are going to be facing them, but then how would they get out?
I'll ask Joe. You want them, will they be facing?
Mr. Albertino had suggested that the width between the parking spaces of 15 feet was going to be inadequate and that the only way to get it to 18 feet, which is what the fire department's going to require, would have meant angling at a 45-degree angle the parking spaces, the 2 rows of parking spaces that are reflected in the western property. If that's the way it's going to be, and that would enforce a one-way traffic in that parking lot, how is it that the asphalt drive can only be used for trailered vehicles at that point?
Well, the asphalt drive was added, if you remember, it was a circle drive at one point because the whole concept was the commercial equipment coming into that parking lot dropping off, and we were trying to get them out of the parking lot. So it's not just for their trailer.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a public road or public drive.
So that gets back to my first question. When you mentioned it would only be used by the equipment, by employees hauling equipment, that's not
Yeah, it's
possible,
right.
is it? Okay.
The employees are gonna have to use it to get into the park.
And that's an employee parking space
Yes.
back there. And so employees will use it as well as employees who are hauling trailers.
Correct.
Thank you. That's the only question I have, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Mr. Glasky?
Thank you. First, I want to thank you for coming back with such a remarkable site plan.
Thank you.
Very nice. On the dumpster enclosure, it says 6-inch or 6-foot high chain link gates, green, new 6-foot white vinyl fence. Could you just clarify what you mean by that?
It's my understanding it'll be a 6-foot white vinyl fence that will be covering this area.
On 3 sides?
The gates will-
Chain link, because plastic would have a tendency to wear down fast. But the chain links will be sturdy enough that if the dumpsters hit them, they won't get damaged.
And they'll also have the slats in them so you can't see them.
Okay. And then, just to clarify, this drive, is it going to be just for employees, or is that going to be a way to get out of the lot to the east onto Route?
No, it'll be just for employees,
So which,
and we'll mark it one way.
so which way are the spaces going to be angled in the lot on the?
They'll have to be angled to the northwest.
I don't think you want to limit that to employees. That wasn't the concept. It's for customers, because the customer that comes in with their trailer that drops off their commercial equipment in the morning,
You'll
that's
wanna
why we
make that
put
way
that
out.
there, so they could get out of the lot without backing out onto
Yeah, he will.
Manchester Road.
That will be their egress.
Yeah.
That will be their egress, yes.
So I just want to make sure you don't limit yourself in any ordinance that
I
says you
see what you're
can't.
saying.
And I don't have any objection to
opposed to
it
it
being,
either. Right.
being a public access. I think that's a better solution. People that are entering the lot from Ruth can then continue on around the rear of the building and back out onto Manchester and vice versa.
Right.
As long as that drive lane is wide enough.
We will make it so.
Okay. Certainly the applicant, I wouldn't think, would have any objection to the removal of that limitation.
No problem.
Okay. Other questions for the applicant? Would any member of the audience like to address the commission on this application? Mr. Wise?
I think you guys have hit on everything that was in the staff report, plus some additional items. The only other recommendation that staff would make is along Ruth Avenue, they've got proposed ash trees along there. I would recommend maybe looking at an alternative species. As from the city's perspective, we're reviewing all of our ash trees across the city and preparing for in a couple of years that those may have quite a bit of damage. So there may be a more appropriate species given the likely impending coming of the emerald ash borer into the St. Louis region.
Do you have a recommendation, Mr. Wise?
My recommendation is not an ash tree.
That's not allowed.
Okay.
Not an ash tree.
Mr. King, Mr. Russo, can you work with staff?
We'll definitely consider that.
Any other questions? Okay, Chair will entertain a motion taking into account the amendments suggested by Mr. Obertino, Mr. Nuremberger, and Mr. Wise.
Just had one other point. Is the signage included, I know they're talking about doing another sign that's comparable what they have currently on their other property. So does that need to be something that we see, or does it have to come back to us, or anything like that?
It does not currently. Under the current regulations for the general commercial district, it just falls under the straight regulations of Chapter 19, which actually don't permit the inclusion of the sign plan submittal through
Okay,
this.
and I think Mr. Russo said he was gonna
Right.
do a sign comparable to the one on the other side that were approved.
We will meet the ordinance requirement.
And the last thing I would like to have is we, somewhere in the motion or whatever, that we make sure that before the occupancy permit is given, officially that they're done, that all the improvements are done before they occupy the building, or at some point, there's a mechanism to make sure all the things are done, are approved and done before they get the full occupancy permit. That's all I had, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Wise, thoughts on that point?
I think that that's a perfectly reasonable requirement to reinforce what we already do all of the time.
Okay, Mr. Nurnberger, do you have a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve with the stipulations that were discussed.
Second? I mean, is that specific enough, or is that?
Well, just to clarify, Mr. Nurnberger, your motion is to approve the amended site plan with the amendments that have been suggested by you on 2 separate occasions tonight, as well as the amendment suggested by Mr. Obertino. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Mr. Glasky?
Yeah, I'll just enumerate them for the record. That the ash trees on the plan be replaced with suitable street trees from the list of approved street trees that the city has. That the parking be angled and the drive lane be widened per city code and fire code. That the drive lane be open to the public in both directions, that the boulders on the north side of the easternmost lot be replaced with trees, and that the improvements be completed before an occupancy permit is granted. Is that accurate?
I believe so.
Yes.
Yeah.
That
All right,
sounds-
thank you for clarification, Mr. Glasky. Is that a second, Mr. Plufka?
I'll second that.
All right, roll call.
David Plefka,
Yes.
Jennifer Hansen,
Yes.
Dan Glosky,
Yes.
John Nerys, yes. Terry Knowles,
Yes.
Jeff Moore,
Yes.
Rich Obertino.
Yes.
Motion passes, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Next step for this petitioner, Mr. Wise?
I'll be in contact with him to get the public hearing scheduled before the Board of Aldermen for final consideration for the conditional use permit.
Very good. Thank you for your cooperation, Mr. Russo.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
All right, next item under old business is the petition for site plan approval for exterior building modifications at 2921 South Brentwood Boulevard. Mr. Landau? The commission will recall that this application has also been considered at the last commission meeting as well as the subcommittee meeting, and I believe Mr. Landau has made many of the changes that were suggested by the commission. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
And for the record, the subcommittee was unanimous in its approval of this petition. Having said that, are there any questions from commissioners for this applicant?
Could he kind of go over some of the changes you think that were kind of relevant to the site?
Well, sure.
The major change was getting rid of the mansard roof and replacing it with a drive-in material, changing all the windows, not all the windows, but the relevant windows on the front and the north side of the building to add new windows and doors to make it more of a storefront. Going to add green space in the front of the building, a small brick wall. Within the green space, it was decided that we're not having burning bushes, we're having grasses, ornamental grasses. We're removing the AC unit on the front section of the building, the south section, and then replacing, we're not going to add a unit, but we're going to take an existing unit and beef it up. It's a split system, so we will not have another unit on the roof whatsoever. So within the split system, we'll be replacing the AC unit on the back side of the building, the existing one, and the furnace inside the building itself.
Any questions for the applicant? Would any member of the commission or the audience like to address the commission on this petition? Okay, if there's no further questions,
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I just to clarify, we went through a lot of issues that were, the trucks are gonna enter in off Collier Avenue on your property, and then they're not gonna be sitting any longer on the street as they come in. Is that
That's
correct?
not mine. It's
So we're-
Bomarito.
This is,
Oh, I'm sorry.
No trucks on mine.
Okay,
so get ready, Mr. Bomarito.
I'm sorry. That's, yeah, never mind.
All right, any further questions? Mr. Plufka?
I would make a motion that we accept the or that we accept to approve the application.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Rich Overtino,
Yes.
Jeff Moore,
Yes.
Terry Knows,
Yes.
John Nuremberg is yes. Dan Glaucy,
Yes.
Jennifer Hansen,
Yes.
David Plufka.
Yes.
Motion passes, Mr. Chairman.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Nuremberg. Thank you, Mr. Landau, for working with us. Okay, next item under old business is a petition for conditional use permit and site plan approval with respect to 2827 South Brentwood Boulevard and 8827, 8823, 8819, and 8815 West Pendleton Avenue. Is the petitioner here? Please step forward, sir. State your name and address and relation to this application.
This is Matt Wolf, Wolf Architecture and Design, 7412 Manchester Road.
Okay, Mr. Wolf, we've been together as a commission on a couple separate occasions, the last being the subcommittee meeting. Can you, for the benefit of the audience, can you review the changes that you have made to the site plan since the last general meeting, so September 17th meeting?
The main change is that we've taken the parking that was on the west side of the site and flipped it and put it on the north side of the site so that when cars pull in, the lights will be shining into the fence. Other than that, we did a lot of clarifications of the type of lighting on site and how the docks would work with the trucks pulling in and off the road off of West Pendleton.
Okay, for the record, I want to recognize Mr. Nuremberger made that suggestion about flipping the parking away from Pendleton Avenue and replacing it with landscaping. I thought that was an excellent suggestion and one that's been incorporated by the applicant. Mr. Wise, staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think the applicant hit on the biggest change that has been proposed is the parking area flipped to the north side of the drive aisle. The other main idea that was talked about during the subcommittee meeting was there's an existing AT&T distribution box that's located essentially between the existing curb cut and the proposed curb cut off of Pendleton. And that existing distribution box is affecting the site design to a pretty large degree. Coming out of the subcommittee meeting, one of the things that the subcommittee had asked staff to do was to try to get in touch with AT&T and see if there was any way that we could help promote this idea to AT&T to help get this the box moved slightly to accommodate the two docks being placed next to each other and the elimination of the proposed curb cut that's rather large. I have reached out to AT&T. I have talked to their area engineer. I'm not sure what her exact title is. They are open to moving the box at someone else's expense, and that expense is rather large. So at this time, staff has not been able to get any further than the applicant was in promoting the relocation of that box to a more desirable and safer location.
Can I add, we originally had the two docks together, and we'd rather do that, but because of that box, we're kind of forced to separate the docks.
Questions for the petitioner?
I guess I should go.
Okay, Mr. Nuremberger?
You know what the start of my questions are?
Yes.
The parking is one, the trucks going in and out. They're not gonna be they're going to come on Cal.
That was your idea, and that was a great idea. Thanks.
Thank you. So that's all I had, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Mr. Albertino?
I still just want clarification on some of these two curb cuts. We're taking the existing curb cut and we're not doubling it, but we're adding and going from 24 feet to 35 feet in width. That's the curb cut that's there today that you've been using. So I'm curious why that's necessary. We're taking the city street and we're widening the city street and putting 85 feet of curb cut into this city street. And I still just, explain to me the traffic flow. Where do you think a truck's coming from? How they're getting into your site? Why we have to have a 50-foot wide radius that goes into parking stalls and not
Sure.
the loading dock?
Well, let me first address the dock on the east, which is the existing dock. Right now, trucks come down Collier, like the Schnucks trucks, and then they come down Pendleton, just short of Brentwood, and then they back into that dock. And to do that, the cab actually goes onto the properties that are across the street when they're backing in. I believe there's a dumpster cage or something also that's there. So if there's ever a car parked on that street in front of those businesses, that truck has a real problem getting in and runs over the lawn on that curb there, on the inside of the curb. On the western dock, we have the same issue, although now we're more likely to have cars parked on the street since we're closer to some of the residential houses. So to avoid, well, we don't have the luxury of being able to pull a cab onto the lot across the street. We have to stay within the street, and that's what's causing that curb to be so wide. These are 18-wheelers with 50 to 60-foot long trucks.
And the cars are parking on the north side of Pendleton or the south side?
The cars park on the south side of Pendleton, and that causes a problem for the trucks to be able to back in. When the cab swings around when they're backing into the dock, that's kind of where the problems are.
Rich, it might be, one thing that they added in the site plan that maybe is not being clear. They're gonna, all the deliveries are gonna be, the big trucks are gonna be delivered at the west side dock. The east side dock is gonna be for going out, the trucks that are loading and going out, the smaller trucks. The big trucks are gonna go in this side. So I think he's trying to have more that you can curb out, the truck can go out easily onto the street, so it is not gonna cause a problem. I think that's your solution, is that correct?
Well, part of the, when the trucks come in and if they get there early, they can actually pull into a dock and be out of the way.
Right,
Couldn't do that before because trucks had to get into that same dock for shipping out before the truck can
Right.
move in. So that's why there's two docks.
right.
As for what you were saying, I can't say that we'll never have a 18-wheeler go into the east dock, but it's more intended for the smaller trucks to be able to get in and out of that dock. Correct.
Yeah, that's what my understanding was. Not to limit it only to it, but on a regular basis, that's what the plan is, to have
Correct.
it happen that way.
And by doing this, we hope to sort of reduce some of the traffic, since now we can come in with one big truck and unload, and not have to do smaller trucks and do multiple loads.
Mr. Albertino, are you done?
Yeah, I still just think it's a bad situation. But
Other questions for the petitioner? Mr. Wise?
Kind of back to this point and kind of to reiterate some of the discussion at the subcommittee level. I think a lot of the discussion and a lot of the concern with the two driveways really centralizes around the AT&T distribution box. That box, if it were able to reasonably be relocated, would allow for essentially these two curb cuts to be consolidated to some extent into one curb cut that would serve the two adjacent docks that are next to each other.
Correct.
And so really, that distribution box is unfortunately driving a lot of the decisions on the site design.
Correct. Apparently, it's the hub for the whole neighborhood, which is causing the problem.
Okay, other questions from commission members? Any member of the audience like to address the commission on this petition? Any further? Chair will entertain a motion.
I would move that we approve the site plan as submitted and the conditional use permit.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Glowski, second by Ms. Knowles. Roll call, please.
David Plefka,
Yes.
Jennifer Hansen,
Yes.
Dan Glaucy,
Yes.
John Nurnberger is no, Terry knows,
Yes.
Jeff Moore,
Yes.
Rich Obertino.
No.
Motion passes, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Nurnberger. Mr. Wise, you'll handle the next step with the applicant?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Okay, new business. First item under new business is the petition for conditional use permit and site plan approval for a new drive-through fast food restaurant at 8590 Eager Road. Petitioner being Chick-fil-A Incorporated. Is the petitioner here?
Yes, I am.
Please step forward, sir, and introduce yourself and your relation to this petition.
My name is John Grieva, and I am with Wolpert, and we are the representative for Chick-fil-A. A member, or Mr. Jason Hill, the development manager with Chick-fil-A, is also here this evening.
How do you spell your last name, sir?
GrzywA.
Grieva?
Grieva.
Grieva. Okay, Mr. Grieva, can you generally outline the application that is before the commission tonight?
Yes, good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for your time. So the existing site is the Macaroni Grill site, and the proposed development is to remove the existing restaurant and construct approximately a 4,800 square foot quick service restaurant with a drive-through. The intent is to reuse the majority of the existing L-shaped parking lot that's currently there. The entrance to the drive-through would be on the far west side of the existing parking lot to maximize the amount of stacking for the drive-through. The building features four-sided architecture and I believe there are elevations included with the package we submitted. So that's a red color is the field brick color, and then there's a lighter white or a cream color accent at the top of the building. As I mentioned, the intent is to reuse the existing parking lot, which would allow a couple things. One being, like I mentioned, the loading for the drive-through starting all the way to the west. So in the event that stacking for the drive-through were to back up beyond the loading point, it would still be contained on the property within in the parking area. The other thing that allows us to do is to maintain the existing landscaping around the perimeter of the site. And that existing landscaping will also be enhanced with some proposed shrubs and other bushes. Hours of operation of Chick-fil-A are 6:30 a.m. to 10 p.m. That's Monday through Saturday, and they are closed every Sunday. So with that, I think that's sort of the general proposed development, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, Mr. Wise, staff report.
As mentioned, the applicant is proposing to construct a 4,700 square foot quick service restaurant with a drive-through. The site is currently used as a sit-down restaurant. However, the addition of the drive-through does require a conditional use permit to be issued by the city along with the review for the site plan. So that's why we have the application for the conditional use permit and the site permit review coming in before the commission. Along with this request, as required by the city's code, we have mailed out letters of notification to all property owners within 300 feet of the subject site. The subject site itself is a 1.16 acre parcel of land that's zoned PD planned development. This parcel is part of the Brentwood point with the Deerberg's overall development in that area. The applicant hit on several of kind of the key points of what they're proposing. A couple points that staff would highlight. One, he mentioned the stacking along with the drive-through and how the L-shaped lot kind of provides a logical shape for that. Staff is in general agreement that is a good feature. However, we would recommend having the city's traffic engineer take a look at the proposal, the site circulation, the impact of the drive-through operation on the site to ensure that everything is being done to the best extent practicable. That would also include looking at the parking, how the interrelation between the parking and the drive-through play together. All of that would be included in that review. The applicant mentioned some additional landscape buffering with the idea of preserving what's there and enhancing that with additional landscaping, particularly on Eager Road and the drive entrance into the Brentwood Point development. Under the PD district regulations, there is a site coverage requirement, and the district regulations also provide an opportunity for a bonus to that requirement of up to 15%. In the applicant's application, you'll note that they are requesting an 8% site coverage bonus. So that is less than the current site as it's developed. It would be a slight reduction in that. But they are proposing to use the additional landscape buffering along Eager and the drive as justification for that additional site coverage. Under the city zoning ordinance, the additional landscape buffering is an item that is specifically called out as a preferred alternative for justification for the landscaping or for the increased site coverage. Along with that, the applicant, you'll notice it's a fairly thick proposal. They've got a lot of information. There is a very comprehensive submittal for all the signage on the site that's been included. With this being in the PD, the signage is also being proposed to be done through the sign plan process. So all of that is included for the commission and ultimately the Board of Aldermen's consideration in the process. Last item is the future land use plan. Within the comprehensive plan, this area is designated as a regional, I'm sorry, the term escaped me, regional mixed use area. So you see the development pattern that's up there, and it's a fairly logical replacement of the existing use that's there. Some notable goals as far as the site design that are called out in the staff report are ensuring the high quality of design and proper character and scale, providing pedestrian connections between the developments, and incorporating landscape and hardscape treatments into site design. With this, there's a lot of moving parts, particularly with the impact to the traffic. So staff is recommending that this be forwarded to the subcommittee and have the city's traffic engineer engaged to provide a report and an update to the commission on the proposed circulation and impact of the drive-through itself.
Yeah, and I think that's a good recommendation, particularly the traffic engineer, given this high-profile site and the fact that a drive-through is being proposed. I think that's a very good recommendation. So let's take that into account that, barring an objection, that we're going to be going to subcommittee on this. Additionally, at the subcommittee, another concern that Mr. Wise picked up on of mine is the eligibility for this bonus. I'd like, given this parking lot that's to the west, I'd like to see some more landscaping in that area to qualify this applicant for a bonus. So if you could take that into account in your landscaping plan before the subcommittee meeting. Questions from commission members?
Chairman, I have a question.
Yeah, Ms. Hanson.
You gave hours of operation. Is it fair to assume that the drive-thru's open the entire time from 6:30 to 10?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Mr. Pulaski?
Question for Mr. Wise. Will we have the traffic engineer's report before site plan?
I've been trying to engage them and get everything worked out ahead of time. I'm hoping that within the next day or two, we'll be able to give them notice to proceed on moving forward with it. And at that time, I can provide the commission with an anticipated deadline. I think the goal would to absolutely be to have that, if we can get it done in time, at a bare minimum, to have them at that meeting to present their findings.
Because I think it would be premature to have any further review of this without the results of that report.
Mr. Nurnberger?
Well, I would just to reiterate, if you're talking about tearing the building down and starting from scratch, I think you should plan on a couple of these site plan meetings before we take it to any vote, because that's a big change to me. I know what your intent is as far as the restaurant, but I'm a little bit concerned about not the type of restaurant. It's more of a fast food than a sit down. And I think that's a really big change for the neighborhood. And that's going to be some consideration that has to be taken into effect. So I really think and having it 8%, you're building a new building. You can make it 10% some way, somehow. You can do more than that, actually. You can do a lot of things. You probably, Justin, can you explain the property ownership to the commission as far as, do they own the one lot that the site sits on, or is there agreements in place with the Dierbergs properties as well? How does that work?
So the existing lot, it is my understanding that it will continue to be owned by the current, which is Macaroni Grill, and that they're entering into a lease arrangement for this proposal. With that said, it does kind of fall under the Brentwood Point development, and Dierbergs has provided correspondence approving the application as well to be submitted to the city.
So who owns the lot that they're going to be developing?
Who owns the lot?
Macaroni Grill or Brentwood Point?
Macaroni Grill.
Okay. So what we're talking about is just improving that plot of land.
Correct.
Is that fall within all the parameters of the site, as far as there has to be an acre lot or some sort such?
Correct, and yes.
That all fits within, okay.
Yeah. The proposed lot is a 1.16 acre tract.
Okay. And then, well, I drove the site quickly before I came here, and there's a lot of trucks that go in and out, I would assume, for the back, for the beauty bands and all the other, that would not change that access or
Correct.
egress?
The access is, the current access, how it comes in off of Eager Road through the existing traffic signal would remain the same. You would come into the site through the existing entrance that is in the Macaroni Grill, and it would just be slightly reconfigured to have the drive-through restaurant as well as accommodate the drive-through coming around the backside of the proposed building.
And the other thing, I know notification go out 300 feet, but 300 feet is Target and the surrounding commercial properties, and should we expand it into the neighborhood at all? That's just a thought. On the other side, I guess. Yeah. No, on our side.
The villas?
Yeah. I don't know. It was just a thought, if we wanted to expand it at all. That's all I had, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, just for the record, and Mr. Grieva, please correct me if I'm wrong, but the owner, I believe, is Dierbergs, one of Dierbergs' limited liability companies. Is that accurate?
Is that correct?
They own the majority of the shopping center. Our lease would be with Ignite, who is a franchisee owner of several Macaroni Grills.
Okay. Pursuant to a...
Sorry, excuse me. Dierbergs owns that lot.
Okay, that's my understanding, is the owner of the property is Dierbergs, and the transaction that's proposed is in the line, in the akin to a sublease, I believe, with Macaroni Grill, is that correct?
I believe that's correct.
All right, well, you tell us if
Yes.
that's not correct.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, then it goes to my point, do we have to look at not necessarily the whole complex, but if the site plan, they're changing a really major part of the site plan, I think it should be looked at. If the same owner owns a strip center and that's doing this development, they have to be involved or know what's going on and should be looked at entirely as
Okay,
well.
yeah, Mr. Wise, can you look at that in terms of how these parcels are structured?
And I can clarify a little bit, and I apologize. If you look at the application for the conditional use permit, it does have the owner down as Deerberg's Brentwood LLC, with the application signed off on by the representative from Deerberg's as well.
Okay. Let's clarify Mr. Nurnberger's point about the
Absolutely.
parcels and how they're set up. Other questions for the petitioner? Mr. Moore?
Back to the traffic flow, very briefly. I think we all can recognize that when we visit a Chick-fil-A, particularly during lunch hour, that this stacking and site circulation can get pretty congested. I mean, my hat is off to the restaurant. I mean, having a couple people out there, with tablets taking orders and pushing cars through, it's commendable. But I would suggest that our traffic engineer subcommittee meetings in this panel take into consideration that this is probably one of the busiest spots in central St. Louis County, record sales per square foot next door. This is going to be a very busy drive-through.
Okay, thank you. Questions for the petitioner from the commission? Any member of the audience like to address the commission on this application? Mr. Geppert, please step forward.
Your address?
Do I understand that the petitioner is talking about taking down the present building and building a new structure?
That's correct.
As you all served for many years on this commission, I really have to express that I don't think this is a positive step forward for the community. I'm really not sure that it is an addition to the community. And I'm not sure how it's going to add to the aesthetics of that, of the Eagle Road environment. I really am, I'm hard pressed to find a positive to this. Anyway, that's all.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Plufka.
could I ask you to expand on that and give me some explanation as to why? Is it the nature of the restaurant? Is it the elevation? Is it?
I think where I'm coming from is that the aesthetic nature of what they're going to probably build is not going to be up to the quality of what is there now. Therefore, there'll be a deterioration in the aesthetic quality of what's along Eagle Road.
So it's not the nature of the business that's being put in there as being
Not necessarily,
differentiated,
no.
But you're just concerned about the aesthetics of the building itself?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
To follow up on that, are you concerned about the departure from a sit-down, higher-end restaurant to fast food generally, or are you just concerned about the aesthetic appeal of this particular applicant?
Actually, I like Chick-fil-A.
Me too. It's delicious.
But but I think no. I am more concerned about the aesthetic quality of the visual presentation to that part of the community. I do think there is perhaps a certain level of concern for moving towards fast food versus sit down, and what that means to the to the overall general nature of the area. But I think it's more a concern for the aesthetics.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Geppert. Any other member of the audience like to address the commission on this petition?
I just wanted to clarify, I double-checked on the ownership situation. I was mistaken, so I apologize. It actually is owned by Deerberg's LLC, and that's who our lease will be with.
And name for the record, please.
My name is Jason Hill. I'm with Chick-fil-A.
Okay. My understanding is that there was a sublease in play.
It was, and we were originally going to lease with that subleaser, but instead we decided to lease directly with Deerberg's as they agreed to do that with us.
I see. Okay. A new lease.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Hill. Any member of the audience like to address the commission? Okay. So the next step, Mr. Grieva, this is a comprehensive change. You've heard some of the concerns that have been raised to date. Given the high-profile nature of this site and the nature of the demolition of the existing site and what's proposed, we usually take matters such as these to our subcommittee. So that's what I believe the commission is inclined to do with this application, unless I hear differently. That subcommittee meeting is set for October, what date, Mr. Wise?
I believe it's the 29th.
It is.
That's what I have.
Yes.
Any objection to tabling this to the October 29th subcommittee meeting? Okay, application will be tabled, and we'll look forward to seeing you then. If you could address some of the concerns that you've heard tonight with regard to the site plans that have been submitted, and just be ready to talk in detail about the application. We'll look forward to seeing you then.
Okay, thank you very much.
Very good, thank you.
And then we're going to have the traffic study done by that time?
Mr. Wise, can you try to get that?
I'll make every effort to get that to you guys.
Very good. And let the applicant know, to the extent we don't have the traffic study, I'm not sure it makes sense to take the application up with further review. So let's, to the extent we don't have it, let's let the applicant know so they can schedule accordingly.
Absolutely.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Next item under new business is a petition for site plan approval for a building addition at 350 Hanley Industrial Court. Petitioner being Carboline. Is the petitioner here?
Yes, sir.
Please step forward, sir. Introduce yourself and your application.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for seeing me tonight. My name is Terry McManus. I am the facilities manager with Carboline Company, located in Hanley Industrial Court. I just want to say Carboline's a firm committed to Hanley Industrial Court. We've been there 40-plus years. Carboline's a company that's been in business since 1947, I believe it is, and recently reached $500 million in sales. The location we're addressing here today is our world headquarters for research and development. Carboline's an industrial coatings company with sales and industrial coatings for structural steel, wastewater and tank containment, fireproofing, which is what we're here to discuss on this building tonight. This particular building is being sought to develop as a continuation and a cost savings for our research and development for our fireproofing group, which generates approximately $60 million in annual U.S. sales for the Carboline Company. You have a drawing in front of you that indicates that the building is basically a second wave addition, if you will, to a 2,400 square foot building we erected in, I believe it was 2009. And due to growth and the cost that we spend associated with outside testing, which is $1 million plus annually to take our tests to places such as Underwriters Laboratory in Chicago and other certified test facilities in the United States, such as Texas. We've done a study on this, and there's a considerable savings that we can do this in-house, plus in addition, potential testing with outside companies that would bring in additional revenue too. Dan, any questions of me?
Very good. So this building would exclusively be used for fire testing?
Fire testing and storage. There'd be some minor, some storage related to the products and such that go through the testing and these huge firing. I actually have with me Ed Taylor, who is the fireproofing manager for Carboline Company, who if need to be called upon for any technical questions with the equipment, things like that, he'd he would be happy to step up to the podium.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Wise, staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The subject site is part of a larger, essentially kind of campus of parcels and buildings that is located in the Hanley Industrial Court. If you look on page 2 of 3 of the staff report, there's an aerial with, the top aerial is highlighted with all of the buildings that are kind of part of this larger campus development. And the bottom picture kind of shows in white the portion of the site where this proposed addition would be added to. As the applicant has mentioned, this is essentially an addition onto an addition that was approved by the city of Brentwood back in 2008. And so it's kind of a logical or an extension to the northern portion of the property at 350 Hanley Industrial Court. One of the primary initial concerns with this is if you were to look at the aerial or go out onto the site, you notice that this is landing smack dab on top of the parking lot that is out there. The proposal that is out there for this is that it would essentially use the existing parking lot at the west end of their campus. And I can't read the number that's on there, but it's addressed off of Hanley Industrial.
406 Hanley Industrial Court.
Thank you. That parcel is located about 200 feet west of the existing building that's on 350 Hanley Industrial Court. They had a similar type of proposal back in 2008 when they came through the commission. That plan showed a total required parking that if you were to add the addition that they're proposing this evening would require 185 parking spaces. With the removal of the spaces for the proposed addition, they would have 196 parking spaces serving the site. So they've got an excess of 11 spaces serving their campus. And for what it's worth, I've driven by there numerous times and never noticed a parking issue. The parking lot always seems to have ample parking, but they do comply with the city's parking requirement. The proposed addition itself includes the same materials as the addition that was done in 2008. There is a plan sheet that shows that elevation in the commission's packet. The biggest question, I wouldn't want to necessarily phrase it as a concern, but the biggest question that staff would recommend the commission take into account is basically, given the nature of the use, to basically have a full understanding of, are there any odors, are there any noise issues that come from any potential equipment that would be associated with this building, and having a full understanding of what the potential impacts of these are on adjacent areas prior to making a decision.
Mr. Wise, has the fire chief had an opportunity to look at this application?
He has not fully provided anything in writing at this time.
Okay, I'd like to hear from the fire chief. The fire chief is satisfied with the application, and I think that would alleviate many of those concerns. So unless there's an objection, I'd like to get that report and hopefully have that before the subcommittee meeting.
Absolutely.
Very good. Questions for the applicant? Ms. Hanson.
I do, and it's just basically on the nature of the testing, the equipment that's going to go in there. Is this just furnace testing, or what are you?
If I may, I'd like to yield to Ed Taylor, who's with me, the fireproofing laboratory manager.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I realize a site plan committee will talk about this in better detail, but I'd like to have a nutshell of what's going to go down there.
Sure. There's going to be a what we would consider a full-scale furnace in there. Inside dimensions are going to be probably 13 by 15 by about 10 foot deep. It will have approximately 20 to 30 million BTUs worth of heat that's capable of going into the furnace. It will have ring structures that will set on posts around the furnace, so the furnace bears no weight, which will contain structural steel members, flooring units, that type of thing, that are used in basic construction of buildings and high rises and offshore platforms and that type of thing. We will be running gas-fired furnace, and essentially what the furnace is doing for us is it's pre-testing and eventually fully qualified testing for our fire-resistant coatings that we make and supply to basically the world.
So outside of furnace testing, that's the only large piece of equipment you'll have in there?
There'll be well, obviously there'll be a smoke abatement system on the outside. As far as noise is concerned, I don't believe there's going to be a lot of noise. There's going to be a draft motor out there that will be drawing out of the furnace and going through this scrubber system. But any noise that comes from that is going to be one block by our building. There's an embankment in the back of the building, and if necessary, our furnace design and people also provide sound deadening for anything like that.
I assume you've done some due diligence with respect to environmental impact?
Yes.
Okay. Do you have any kind of written report, or is that something you'll be able to bring to the site plan committee?
Well, we're from an environmental impact, anything that's coming out the stack is going to be steam. There's going to be a rather extensive recuperative water scrubber in place. And anything everything that's going to be scrubbed out will be going down into a holding tank, and obviously that water just continuously being reused and going down to the bottom. And what comes out the stack is steam.
Has there been an impact study done, or maybe environmental impact study is imprecise, but do you have something in writing?
I would have to get that from the scrubber.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, additionally, any writing or documentation you have on the sound implications would be appreciated as well.
Sure.
Okay, Knowles.
Knowles. Thank you. In relation to noise, tests run 24 hours?
No. Testing in this particular part of the building would be limited to probably at most 3 times a week, and at most 2 to 3 hours a day. This is not a 24-hour process.
Okay, thank you, that's all.
Mr. Nurnberger.
I was just curious, you said you've been in Brentwood for a long time. Have you owned these 2 parcels all that time, or are you buying this and adding to it?
No, it's currently wholly owned actually by our parent company, RPM Incorporated, out of Medina, Ohio. They own 30-plus companies throughout the United States.
So I'm just concerned about if you remove all the parking from that end, all of a sudden this building becomes part of the whole site or whatever, and it really makes a property not valuable because nobody could sell this property and then because they couldn't park it,
I guess I would question, well, first of all, we have currently 55 employees at that location. It's a strictly a test facility. Only at one time prior to the flood of September of 2008, it contained our administrative headquarters also. However, due to the fact that the lower end of the property sits in a floodway/flood zone,
right.
We looked at other property within the Brentwood location, but unfortunately settled for the headquarters as in a leased facility currently in Maryland Heights at Page and Shoots. So current employees are 55 with the potential to add 6 for this facility. So, but as Mr. Weiss indicated, we not only have the large parking lot, which contains approximately 160 spaces at 406 Hanley Industrial Court. We have parking in front of what was the original headquarters building that came down after the flood.
Right.
Because it taken water several times over the years. Additional spots along there and across the front, which I believe I listed in the total number of spaces.
Okay.
So I'm not clear as what deems
more,
the
it was
requirement
more
of
of a
number spaces.
concern. You're going to improve this space immensely, and that means you're going to be around for a long time.
Well,
you've already been there for a long time.
We put $2 million since September of 2008 in floodproofing, renovations, additional equipment, things like that. This project in itself with the building and equipment is $3 million. We're not going anywhere. We're committed to staying in carbon.
That satisfies my concern.
Yeah, certainly, and a valid concern. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That's all I had, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Moore.
Gentlemen, is there some place or some other company that you can point to where we could see one of these furnaces in operation? And I'm speaking of video, but just I'm having trouble conceptualizing, what was it, 20 million BTU and a smokestack. I mean, I'd love to see this thing running.
You'd love to see it running?
Yeah, is there any place that you can think of?
Well, we have a smaller unit, smaller units at our facility now. Again, this is just so that we could test larger items. But we do have three smaller furnaces on our site right now with water scrubbers on them. So you could actually see this thing running if you so choose.
So currently, at this time, it's running a few times a week, a couple
Yes.
hours a day?
Yes. Yes. It's just essentially moving it from that place into just a little bit larger of a place so we can test larger specimens.
My question's answered.
Field trip.
I'd like to mention, if I may, that we have an annual inspection/tour with the Brentwood Fire Department, which was just most recently done in August. And those folks being in the fire business are always very interested in what we're doing up in that particular division of the business down there. So we're certainly welcome anyone who wants to come take a look at what we're doing. But we do, as Ed mentioned, there's currently a furnace in place with a water scrubber, and just had an audit, EPA audit actually, September 25th, day-and-a-half audit. No issues with the EPA or anything like that.
Good. Thank you, Mr. McManus. Mr. Plufka.
Thank you. I just had one question. It was somewhat answered with Jeff's question. So the furnace itself is just a place in which you place specimens that are then being fire tested or fireproof tested?
Correct.
And those are materials that have been coated or painted with the materials that you folks sell, and then you rate them based on how well they do in these test situations?
How long they last, yes.
Okay.
Before the steel reaches a certain temperature.
And then my only comment is to reiterate a couple of other comments that have made with regard to noise. I know when my furnace kicks on, I can hear it, and mine is probably a 1/100th of the BTUs that you're talking about in your furnace. And I just didn't know if there'd been any testing done of so many meters away outside the building, so many meters away, what the sound of that is.
The furnace itself is dead quiet.
Huh.
Dead quiet. The combustion is done via gas air mixtures coming in.
Doesn't that combination of gas and air? Yeah, doesn't that make noise?
It will make a noise, but it will be in that area well below the 80 decibel limit.
Okay.
And you have documentation you're going to provide to us?
Yeah, it has to be, and that's what we have. That's why we're not designing anything ourselves. We have a burner design and control coming in. We have a furnace, people that make furnaces come in and scrubbers come in. We're not doing any of that work ourselves.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Glasky.
Yeah, thank you. I just had a couple of questions on the floor plan. I see the furnace and pit, and then there are 3 other boxes. They say stacked rings here.
Yes.
What are those?
Those are the rings that will house our beams that we would like to put across the top of the furnace. Those are relatively heavy, so we have hard points built into the floor of that building so that we can support those rings if we have to 3 high. The weight of those.
So those rings are lifted up and then placed over the furnace?
Correct.
Okay. And then I would be interested in any information you can provide the commission about any hazardous materials. I noticed that you have cross sections of the grade. I assume that's for dealing with any type of disaster and any toxic chemicals that might be in use there.
In the fire test facility, there won't be any toxic chemicals in that room. I'll tell you that right now. We don't want to have any real flammables or anything inside that building. We've got enough down in the pit with the furnace, and the furnace again is going to be contained in this pit. And if you wonder why we have a pit, we have it dropped down for safety reasons and to be able to drop the height of the building down. Otherwise, if this 10-foot thing was sitting on top of the building, we'd have safety concerns about people being around it, and also our building would have to be a little bit higher. And we want to keep that building height down.
Okay, so any information you can provide us about the potential safety, environmental hazards that are involved in this would be much appreciated. And then I personally would like to see, I was not aware that you had smaller furnaces on the site presently. I would like to make a visit when those are in operation so I can get a better feel for what you're proposing.
Okay. We'll give you a full schedule that we will be working to.
Okay.
honestly, it's raining bad. It's been 7, probably 3 o'clock, 7 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, more likely than 10 for something else.
If you could just get that to Mr. Wise, and then he'll circulate that to the commission.
Absolutely.
Ms. Hanson?
2 more quick questions. Do you intend to allow other companies to utilize the test facility? Are you going to lease it out, allow others to take advantage of your?
Right now, it is going to be part of our research facility. There aren't going to be very many of our competitors coming to our facility to do this work, to do any work like this. They all have their own test facilities, maybe not quite as big as this one, except for the ones that are overseas. But they will not be coming, I do not believe they will be coming to us. We may have demonstrations or something like this, if the fire department is interested in anything we're doing, or our customers or something like this. But right now, no, but 2 years from now, I couldn't say.
I guess I'm envisioning more along the lines of component parts, or, I don't know, somebody who supplies parts for you, to go into your final products, if there's going to be a streamlining process. In other words, you said maybe 2 or 3 days a week for a couple hours a day.
Yes.
I want to know if that's going to be consistent. Obviously, based on sales, that may increase, but I wanted to know if another element of that could have been.
I think we're looking at more logistics on those times. I'm not going to be able to burn a test today and then get it off and break it down, set another one up and burn it the next day. The logistics just aren't there to do that.
And then finally, who manufactures the furnaces you have?
We have BDC, Burner Design and Control.
Mm-hmm.
They are doing all the burner design and control. They have a specialist that builds furnaces for them for other types of facilities that are designing the furnace. And of course, and then they will either use Western Blowpipe or environmental services out of Texas to design and build our scrubber.
That's it. Thank you.
Okay. Further questions? Any member of the audience like to address the commission? Okay, then we will see you, barring any objection, on October the 29th, and hopefully we'll have the fire chief's report by then. And if you could bring any information that will address these noise concerns and any of the other concerns that were asked or identified by the commission members, we'd appreciate it. Okay. We'll look forward to seeing you, and we'll also put you first on the agenda. So we'll look forward to seeing you on the 29th. Thanks for the application.
Thank you very much for hearing us tonight. Thank you.
Okay, we have another couple quick items, I believe, under new business. The first is a petition to amend Chapter 25, Article 6, Division 8, to adopt the new St. Louis County flood insurance rate maps. Mr. Wise, if you could briefly review this text amendment.
This is a process that actually goes back to 2010 when FEMA started a fairly large remapping effort. As part of that remapping effort, a lot of what they're doing is digitizing, updating contours, and essentially, providing hopefully more clear boundaries of where floodplain limits are. In 2010, the majority of Missouri was all approved and put in place. However, there were some contentions between St. Louis County and the Metro East Side, and for the last 4 years, we've basically been in a holding pattern while those flood discussions have been going on at the state and federal level. Staff received a preliminary notice back in August, and subsequently they did provide a confirmation that it is moving forward, and we have been provided notice that we do need to adopt the new flood maps by February 4th, 2015. And they have also asked us, instead of doing an amendment, which we've done previously, to update our ordinance as one entire ordinance. So that's why you have the whole ordinance before you this evening with the red line version of it changed. The primary change is, if you look on the second page of that ordinance, the prior effective date was August 2nd, 1995 and August 23rd of 2000. That has been struck out to February 4th, 2015. And then on page 3, the St. Louis County map panel numbers have been modified to update the new map panel numbers that are in there. There's a couple heading titles that have slightly changed. And then if you look on page page 4, for instance, you'll see in section 25-487 where we've struck out the Director of Public Works / floodplain administrator and updated that to the building official who currently, under our current organization chart, serves as the floodplain administrator. Those are the only changes that are included in this document. So we've got the housekeeping items that are all shown in red with the actual substantive changes in the front part with the map panel numbers and the effective date of the ordinance. The February 4th date is basically from the federal government. They call it a drop dead date. If we were to not adopt this ordinance come February 5th, they would basically remove us from the National Flood Insurance Program. So I think in the coming months, we'll start to see, every community that participates in the National Flood Insurance Program will be making these changes all around the St. Louis region.
Okay, I think that says it all. It's simply adoption of new maps with significant implications if we fail to do so.
Absolutely. And in the staff report, there's a link provided. You have to go through and kind of manipulate some of the layers and change the transparency. But through the county's mapping service, you can, if any residents were to have specific questions, you can on a parcel by parcel basis see what the difference are or will not be on there. So it is available. It's kind of hard to provide a high level analysis of what the change is because it depends on the area of the city.
Mr. Moore?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Weiss, help refresh my memory about the FEMA discussion that we had and how it relates to this.
It is completely unrelated. So the prior discussion, at least the portion of it, there were two main conversations previously, and I'll separate them for a little bit of ease. The first, which got the most attention, was the discussion about including some sort of a cumulative standard for the substantial improvement. That is not included as part of this. It's not proposed as part of this. Not the same project at all. Had this happened before we had done the last one, the second one of those ordinances, where we made those couple minor modifications, we would have just incorporated into this draft. So those were, again, some kind of housekeeping items that they wanted to see done that we've included in. But the main area of discussion during the last set of changes that were before the commission, the big topic was the cumulative impact, where there would be some horizon that would be established where once improvements got to a certain level, they would have to come into compliance with the flood regulations. That's not
raising your building up off the
right,
ground, if I remember.
and that is that cumulative standard is not included in this proposal.
But this mapping and rate map says who would be affected.
Right. So right now there is a flood study and a rate map that's on file for every area within. In our case, we fall under, I think, 2 different maps or a couple of different maps where they show the floodway, the 100-year floodplain and the 500-year floodplain through that area. This was the last ones were done in 95 and 2000. So every several years that go by, there'll be a new effort that'll be done by, essentially led by the federal government to provide updated maps on what the actual floodplain is. That's what this process is.
Thank you.
Yes.
Further questions? Okay, we could either take this up tonight. Any member of the audience like to address the commission? Either take this up tonight or we can table it probably to the next regular meeting. The only concern would be if someone wanted to look at these maps, but I don't think there's much discretion here. Mr. Glowski?
Mr. Chairman, I would make a motion that the commission approve the changes to the code and forward them on to the Board of Aldermen.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Who was the second? I'm sorry.
Mr.
Thank you.
Nurnberger.
Or it may have been
No.
John. Yeah, I think we said it at the same time. So
Yeah,
Okay.
matters not.
doesn't matter.
Roll call, please.
Rich Obertino,
Yes.
Jeff Moore,
No.
Terry knows.
Yes.
John Norberg is yes. Dan Glowski,
Yes.
Jennifer Hansen,
Yes.
David Plevka.
Yes.
Motion passes, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. The last item under new business is a petition to amend Section 25-260 of the Brentwood Code of Ordinances to add churches and other houses of worship as a permitted use within the light industrial district. It seems to be a First Amendment issue. Mr. Wise?
Staff was recently contacted by an a user who was looking at a potential property within the city for, I'm not exactly sure what the use was, but it was a church or religious use. It was located in the light industrial district. This is currently the only district within the city that does not either permit as a by right or conditional use churches or other places of worship to locate within that district. I talked to legal counsel very briefly, and really at the heart of the matter, like you said, Mr. Chairman, it kind of gets into a First Amendment or a protected class discussion. There is a little bit of information, a very brief overview of what is referred to as RLUIPA, which is a federal law that essentially provides protections for, in this case, religious land uses, and discusses basically cities' powers in regulating those land uses. And there's two quick bullet points that say, any regulation must be done in a manner that does not discriminate against or among religious institutions, and does not impose a substantial burden on a religious exercise unless that regulation is the least restrictive means of serving a compelling governmental interest. So with that, staff thought it would be appropriate to bring a text amendment to start off with the commission's review of adding that as a permitted use within the light industrial district.
Any questions?
I do.
Mr. Plevka?
I have a question for Mr. Wise. In the collection of materials that accompanied apparently the omission of churches as being a designated use within LID, was there any logic expressed? Was there any insight provided as to why?
Not that I've found.
Okay, so it may have just been an omission
Absolutely.
rather than some sort of an attempt to keep them.
Absolutely. I would in fact say that's the more likely reason that it's not in there, is simply if you look at when the city's zoning ordinance was done, was prior, the framework of our current ordinance was done prior to RLUIPA being put in place. And so it's just hasn't come up prior to this is really, I think, what it is.
In the course of considering this, were you able to come up with any compelling governmental interest for excluding houses of worship from this part of the city of Brentwood?
No.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Good question, counsel. Mr. Albertino?
Just a clarification, because I don't have the legal, is putting this should it not be as a conditional use? I mean, are we opening ourselves up to, if it's a permitted use and they want to take the building next to these guys putting in this furnace, and it creates an unsafe situation because we just said you're permitted to go in the industrial court?
Well, and that's why,
Do we not have an obligation there?
Mr. Chairman, I think that was what I was maybe getting at, is that maybe there was some logic expressed years ago that perhaps having a house of worship next to an industrial use where there might be hazards of whatever kind, because of their proximity, there might be some safety issue going on there. But the way this works, it is a kind of a reverse logic. We are the ones being restricted here, not the churches. We're the ones that cannot put any undue burden on a religious organization from developing kind of anywhere they want to. And if we do restrict them from certain parts of the city, we better have a very good reason for doing it, and we better articulate that reason.
Mr. Albertino, if you take a look at the other permitted uses there, schools, offices.
Right.
Yeah, I'm sorry, may I ask?
Actually, hang on. Mr.
sorry.
Albertino, are you all finished?
Yeah.
Okay. Ms. Hanson?
Sorry. Justin, I guess just to ask it another way to make sure I'm clear. you didn't find in your research or anywhere along the history that there was some sort of real compelling interest that the city of Brentwood had in place to keep churches
Correct.
out, right?
Correct.
Okay, that's all.
And I would even go maybe a step further. In other places that I've dealt with in the past, churches have been permitted, and I've seen instances, numerous occasions, where they've been utilized in industrial areas. So I don't think it would present that Brentwood would be some sort of anomaly by allowing churches, whether as a conditional or permitted use within the light industrial
Yeah, I
district.
can't imagine a compelling interest that would keep us from allowing it, but I
Right.
didn't know if there was something in the
Yeah.
book or something you came up with.
Ms. Knowles?
Thank you. From a safety standpoint, I would just mention that we have in this same industrial park, daycare, college, school district buildings. I think that industrial court industrial park, whatever, is an inappropriate name for this area now. Light industrial is more descriptive.
Carboline notwithstanding.
Carboline. We won't even get into Carboline. This is the safest thing on Carboline's campus is the furnace.
Mr. Nurnberger?
Didn't we approve, Justin, it may have been before your time, but on Manchester Road, we approved a Church of God just past the place for the blind or whatever, just to right side, about at Mary Avenue or whatever. So I don't think we've ever restricted anybody from doing a church. It might not be in the code or whatever, but there is, I thought churches could do pretty much what they want to. Right? That's what I've heard. So schools as well, but you know. So that's all.
Mr. Plofka?
Mr. Chairman, if there isn't any other discussion, I'm prepared to make a motion.
Okay, so moved. For a second?
Second.
All right. Any further discussion? And the motion is to approve the
Sorry,
text amendment.
the motion is to approve the application, right, is to approve the change.
Okay, roll call, please.
David Plufka,
Yes.
Jennifer Hansen,
Yes.
Dave Glowski,
Yes.
John Nurmer is yes. Terry Knowles,
Yes.
Jeff Moore,
Yes.
Rich Obertino.
Yes.
Motion passes, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Nurnberger. Any member of the aldermen like to address the commission? Seeing none, we'll move on to the city planner's report. Any report?
I guess the one kind of lingering update for you all is the comprehensive plan discussion. We are still working on that. Logistics, we're having a little bit of delay just in getting interviews set up and getting people schedules lined up because the majority of people that did submit on it are out of town. So we're working on that process right now. We hope to get things moving along so that we can bring back information to you all and keep the process moving forward.
How many applications did you receive, Mr. Wise?
I believe 7.
7?
Yes.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Wise? October 29th, site plan review, volunteers, with the understanding, if there's no objection, that we'll start that meeting at 6 o'clock. That works for everyone?
That's great.
Okay. If you could let the applicants know about that, Mr. Wise.
Absolutely.
Good. Rationale for the Board of Aldermen.
Got it.
Under other business. Sir, would you like to address the commission on the mobile food vendor issue? Okay, very good. Mr. Wise, are there any pending applications for a mobile food vendor?
No,
permit?
there are no applications.
Is
at
there
this
any
time.
reason to act eminently on this issue?
No. I don't
Any
see
objection to
pressing-
tabling this to the subcommittee meeting? Okay, so tabled. Chair will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion to adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries.
Discussion